Meghan Gilroy joins us now for another edition of Health and Wellness. And Meghan, you'll be talking to someone new this week.
We will. And we all know that what we eat and how we take care of our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being makes a big impact on our overall health and happiness. Over the next 4 interviews, I'll be talking with the delightful author, Frankel, who weaves together the themes of dieting and spirituality with a good dose of humor in her latest fictional book, Syd Arthur. Ellen is a licensed clinical social worker who created a very clever way to merge her expertise and passions. She draws on her experience working in the field of eating disorders and prevention, as well as her own explorations to find her true self to create a really engaging and entertaining good read. So in the book, we'll follow the main character, also named Syd Arthur, as she goes through a midlife crisis. And in our interviews, Ellen gives us some insights on how Syd's journey might inspire our own. Let's watch. Author and speaker Ellen Frankel has been interviewed on a variety of topics, from eating disorders and body image to spirituality, and she's been interviewed in national magazines and newspapers, as well as on national TV shows and on the radio. So today I'm really honored to have you here with me.
It's nice to be here with you, Meghan.
Thank you. And so you just wrote a book called Syd Arthur, and in it, Syd is a kind of typical middle-aged Jewish woman, and she realizes she's not so happy in her life and that she'd like to have her life be a little more meaningful. So she really moves from a more Western worldview that's very consumeristic to a more Eastern worldview, which has a little more spirituality and introspection in it. So start out by just explaining her name, because that's kind of a merging of the East and the West right there.
It is. When I was younger, I read the novel Syd Arthur by Hermann Hesse and fell in love not only with the story of the Buddha, but that whole notion of what it would be like to travel a spiritual path. And so Syd Arthur ultimately became known as the Buddha, which means one who is awake, and then spent his life teaching that all have the potential to awaken. My novel, Syd Arthur, starts 2,500 years later in the cloistered world of suburbia when we meet Syd Arthur, a middle-aged Jewish woman who's potentially awake, but likes to start her day with a strong cup of coffee just in case. And I think what Syd really has to navigate living in the West and traveling towards the East is what so many of us in the West have to deal with, which is how do you become a spiritual seeker today in a culture that's so consumer-driven that even spirituality has become a commodity to be marketed.
Right.
You know, how do you travel the road to nirvana without getting trapped by all the spiritual accessories for sale? Now, I don't know if you've ever been to an ashram or meditation center, but along with spiritual practices, the gift stores alone there are to die for, or to use the Eastern word, to reincarnate for. You know, gorgeous Indian silk scarves and beaded om earrings and necklaces. How do you sort through the fluff to reach to the core of a spiritual practice without getting attached yet again to more of the material things of the West?
Right. So what can the West really learn from the East?
Well, I think one of the things the West can learn from the East is how to slow down. Well,
That's important.
And I talk very quickly, so I'm one of those people who needs to learn to slow down too. But the East has so many wonderful practices of teaching us just how to take our time, whether it's through yoga, through meditation, through mindfulness and awareness practices that lets us connect to the moment we're in, rather than always trying to be 3 steps ahead of the game and missing out on most of our lives. And I think in our culture, we're so technologically connected 24/7.
Right. It's hard to put down your iPhone.
It is hard to put, absolutely. And I think the East can just teach us how to let go. And in the novel, Syd, who's, you know, this drive-through coffee guzzling character, learns with a wonderful teacher and friend, a character named Bodhi, to enjoy afternoon tea and to create ease and space and time to really be in the moment.
And you've had some East meets West in your life. You told me a little bit about having some Tibetan monks in your own home.
It was wonderful. We had 8 Tibetan monks from the Drepung Losling Monastery come stay with us. About 13 years ago, the Peabody Essex Museum was having this wonderful exhibit with items on loan from the Dalai Lama, and they needed a place to stay. And it was very funny because we had to find the balance. You know, here they are coming into our very Western lives in their maroon and saffron robes, and the kids, my kids were only 7 and 10 then, they loved it because these monks lived in the moment. So when they went to play basketball or Foursquare with the kids, they were fully playing basketball. And, you know, for my part, I tried to find the balance, cooking them tofu and lentils and brown rice. But then my old, you know, heritage came creeping over. My karma came spilling on the kitchen table. I'd make them noodle kugel and sour cream coffee cake and bagels, and we just had a wonderful time with them. It was wonderful. They asked me, I asked them at one point if they had any laundry to do. as a good Jewish mother would.
Right.
And they said yes, and I expected, you know, a big laundry bag, but they're monks who live simply, and they just took off their robes, handed it to me, and I remember saying, I know in Buddhism all is impermanent, but I'm going to wash it on permanent press anyway. I think in translation it got lost, but it was wonderful having their energy at our house and for the kids.
So tell me, if someone at home wanted to kind of get started on the path towards the East, what would be something they could start?
Yeah, there's so many wonderful books out there on exploring Eastern philosophy or Buddhism. There's also, in Marblehead, we're so fortunate to have wonderful yoga programs and yoga classes and meditation. And so there's a lot of great spiritual energy in this community. So people just get on Google, see what meditation classes or yoga classes are out there, and find themselves a great book to read. I think it's a really exciting path to explore.
So thank you again for having me. Sounds like you really had some great suggestions on how the East and the West can meet together.
Well, thank you for having me, and I think we are so lucky to live in this great spiritual energy place of Marblehead.
Yeah.
So
thanks. So if we've piqued your interest about how the East meets the West, and if you'd like to know more about Syd Arthur, you can go to Ellen's website, which is authorellenfrankel.com. And next time on Health and Wellness, we're going to be with Ellen again, and this time we are going to be talking about a battle that so many people fight, that is to have a healthy diet and a healthy weight. And Ellen has a very interesting approach that's radically different from dieting, so I hope you can join us then.